the majority of people, both in Uxbridge and across London and beyond London, are opposed to ULEZ. This is the issue that Labour is facing, that if you happen to be more principled, like one of the Labour MPs on Friday said, she came out very clearly against it, saying it will damage her working constituents, people who've got vans, people who drive, people. It's reasonable and a fair thing to say, and quite brave, because we know there are consequences when people say that in Labour or elsewhere. And across Uxbridge, it's clear that the majority of people do not want this. It's a hot button topic. Almost everyone that's standing is making this an issue because it's so important to all the constituents. And Labour have got a problem, which Labour in its name allegedly is about people that Labour, but long ago, a bit like the Conservatives perhaps, they've kind of lost that relationship to that idea. And now it's much more about technocratic impositions around ideas that might sound nice, bit like net zero, but in reality what they mean is they have huge consequences for people's livelihoods, for our way of life, for restrictions, fines and limits. And so what's happened is the Labour Party are facing a bit of a revolt, which is that they're being told on the doorstep that constituents are utterly opposed to it. So Keir Starmer, on the one hand, he came out supporting Sadiq Khan. Then he said, well, actually, we need a pause to support Danny Beales, who's obviously come up against this on the doorstep.
Yes, that's the key point, isn't it?
What does a pause mean, Richard? The question is, does it mean until July 20th and hopefully we can flannel people and then get through and then we'll just carry on as normal? Either one is for ULEZ expansion in its current terms or one is against it. It's very clear, couldn't be clearer. So you don't need a pause. What we need is to stop it if you're opposed to it, or you argue to continue with it.
So then on the day after he said that he was sort of with the Labour candidate on this issue in Uxbridge, Danny Beales, who, as you say, has obviously come up across a major revolt against this by people he's been knocking on the doors of. But the following day, on another channel, Keir Starmer said he supports Sadiq Khan and that there was nothing legally they could do about it because of the air pollution requirements.
It's utterly disingenuous and very dishonest to the public to say he had no choice. This is the thing about managerial technocrats. It used to be that they would say it about the EU, that they often say it about the IMF or someone else, but they say, well, we've got this thing that we have to do. It's a permanent crisis and we've got this legal imposition, and so we can't make judgments and choices. It's absolutely ridiculous. The very thing that someone is elected in to do is to execute on a series of things, on measures. His was meant to be housing, transport, a range of issues about services. That's what Sadiq Khan should stick to. But to your point, Richard, also about it seems that many more people are engaged and discussing and challenging is absolutely the case. I've just been at an event in Bristol during the week where it was a full house. People are very, very concerned about the new low-traffic neighbourhoods and the clean air zones. The same we're finding in the Midlands. In Scotland, we've got something on the 25th of July in Edinburgh. Across Scotland, people are challenging this now. Up and down the country, it was one thing when we were told this 3 years ago about a one-off once maybe every 100 years. Now we're being told that there's a permanent state of crisis, and what has to happen is we've got to stay in some kind of zones. We have to be surveyed everywhere. We have road closures.
That's right. So, Alan, you've got and you've now got the Transport Secretary, one Mark Harper, saying that low traffic neighbourhoods have set people against each other, and that's clearly a very bad thing. Then he's going to say, and therefore he's going to stop government funding, and he's saying that they risk putting voters off net zero.
It's brilliantly contradictory. So Mark Harper, which many of us have been encouraging everyone to write to lobby and campaign to say that stop funding active travel and livable streets. That's the huge government funding that went in and during the lockdowns ended up with road closures, shutting down our way of life now. So they've done that, and that's good. That message has to go to Grant Shapps as well. And that shows what campaigning can do. But as you say, but then he reaffirmed net zero, which is part of the problematic thinking. I think the other thing that's happened that's very important is also 50,000 people have written to the Treasury about cash. I know it's a slightly different issue, but it's linked to the idea of surveillance. Sadiq Khan himself has said, wouldn't it be great if we could just track motorists, know how many people were in the car? You could have it all done. This is technocrats dream. So I think what's important, Richard, here is that the government are getting the message, so are Labour, so is Labour in constituents, but we need to keep getting the public to have its voice heard and to tell all their MPs and councillors and to vote for anyone who's independent, who's standing independently to challenge this.
Absolutely right. And I'll come on to that in a second about voting, because we're just beginning to see it. There's some really interesting things going on where people are rebelling. But at this point, I want to challenge everybody that, well, we've got this legal requirement to deal with air pollution. Yes, you have. But London is in the best 25% of all major capital cities around the world in terms of air pollution. And Howard Cox, the Fair Fuel campaigner, he's gone round with his own device, the same device that's used by World Health Organization, that shows that the roadside in London is healthy. The issue about air pollution is in Sadiq's beloved Tube, where some of it is frankly nothing short of dangerous.
Absolutely. So Howard Cox did a brilliant video on that, and he's used that tester to show, and it's the particles can between 13 and 17 times over what they should be in the danger limit. So whilst it's true that the air's improved in the last 40 years and it's better than most places and is generally very good, it's actually under TfL, which Sadiq has control over. And people have raised this health and safety issue before, Richard, with TfL, and they've poo-pooed it off. I think it's really, really important. Howard Cox is actually one of the founding signatories of the new coalition to stop ULEZ, which has got people from all political parties. It's got independents and it's got campaigners who have all come together, regardless of wider questions about particular policy issues, have said this is absolutely unacceptable. It's undemocratic, it's unnecessary, and it should be scrapped.
And Alan, just finally, talking of democracy and voters, an extraordinary thing has actually just happened in the good city of Cambridge, where for the first time in, I think, 11 years, in a by-election for a council seat, a councillor representing the Conservative Party has been elected because he campaigned against the congestion charge that they're planning to bring in Cambridge, which is remarkable. I think that tells you something, doesn't it?
Absolutely right. And Cheyenne Roloffs and the team over in Cambridge that have been consistently challenging these unnecessary congestion charges, hats off to them. We've worked alongside them. It's a fantastic result. It shows that regardless of polls and other things, that ordinary people are fed up. We've got a cost of living, cost of lockdown crisis. We need to address our energy concerns and infrastructure. We need to be able to not just fine and impose and restrict, but create more opportunities for development and wealth and stop the war on cars and the war on ordinary people. It needs to end now. So I'd encourage everyone to sign the stopulez.net petition together.